Listening to opinions from experts regarding issues relating to Malaysians and the citizens of the world when we go face to face with our guest. Every Thursday at 11:15 a.m. only on TRAXXfm.
Experience the excitement. Right here on TRAXXfm.
This is Trax Momentum with me, Diyana. It is time for Face to Face. I have a very, very, very special guest with me in the studios right now. I'm speaking to young Muhammad Nick Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. And if you are listening right now online, you could actually catch us live on Facebook at TRAXXfm Official. But it gives me great pleasure to welcome young Muhammad Nazmi. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, there's so many things that we would like to tackle. But how are you today, young Muhammad?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, very busy day today, I see. But we'll try to keep this as as informative and as light as possible for our listeners, of course, because you have a very long day ahead. I think to start off with, what a lot of our listeners would like to know, that the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, they plan on prioritizing floods, energy consumption, climate change and environmental protection. Now, this is quite an important thing to prioritize, important issues to prioritize. How does the ministry intend to approach these problems, and will there be more cross-ministerial cooperation? I think that's what a lot of the listeners would like to know.
Okay, thanks, Diyana. I think, there were once people used to talk about that the two most important sectors for a government is health and education. Mm-hmm. And they still are very, very important. But I think now, environment is heading way up there, simply because, at the end of the day, if this planet is not livable, if it's not here, then all else becomes redundant. So that's why I think it's very crucial. We have reached a crucial part, not just Malaysia, but the entire planet. I think, we really need to reduce our carbon emissions. We really need to protect our forests, our mangroves, as we move towards 2050, because we are talking about net zero earliest by 2050, and that's very crucial for us, so that we can have a better future, not just for us but for our children. Mm-hmm.
For sure. Will there be more cross-ministerial cooperation in that sense?
Indeed, because I think there are parts where one is that we're talking about energy security, for example. It falls under my purview. And sorry, before I say that, now it's good that we combine the two ministries before, KETSA and KASA. So from energy to climate change, it has to be under one ministry. From natural resources, including our forests, our jungles, and environment, it has to be under one ministry. So now it's under one ministry is rational. But still, we need our cooperation with other ministries. I was talking about education just now. And one of the important parts is to educate the students. People who are older, it's difficult to change their habits. I mean, that's a given. So, but, if, we can really inculcate the ESG elements in our education system, and the kids, they will, change their habits. And from my interaction with the environmental activists, which tends to be young, they are very vocal, they know their stuff. And why they are so passionate, it's because they know that they have the biggest stake in this. People who are like me, who are slightly older, we won't be around that long. They will have a long time on this planet, so they want their stake to be preserved.
Yes, they are the future generation after all, and they will be helming the planet for us, for the future generation after that. Now, on your first day in office, you mentioned that one of the main priorities is to balance between development and environmental protection. Do you mind elaborating this for us, and why is it so important to strike that balance between environmental preservation as well as development?
Yeah, I think first it's important to note that in spite of what I said just now, which is all crucial, all important, we have to bear in mind that we are still a developing country. And a lot of the countries that are talking a lot about all these ESG issues or about net zero, basically the developed countries, they've had their chance. They've cleared their forests, they've developed, they've industrialized, and they are huge countries, huge economies with a huge carbon footprint in the world. So then it's easy for them to now talk about, let's do this, let's do that, because they've done their development. Malaysia only contributes about 0.69% to carbon emissions in the planet. We're a small country. Our carbon footprint is small. I'm not saying that we don't do anything. I mean, we are still committed to doing all those things, but the solution must be in the context of Malaysia. It has to be realistic with what Malaysia has. So I think that's why it's important that we still need to develop. A lot of people, we still have a lot of B40. A lot of people, even in the urban areas, are going through poverty. So how do we then develop? How do we then provide affordable housing and at the same time protect our environment? Because now also, the environment is coming under increasing pressure. I like to say that when I was growing up, I assumed that the rhinos will always be around, right? And now they're gone, right? And the tigers are endangered and so on and so forth. So I think that is why it's very crucial. And we are also, a signatory to the Paris Agreement. We are committed to various UN conventions. So I think those things, will drive our transition. We are committed to have an energy transition. We are very reliant on coal at the moment and natural gas. Coal is the worst. And I think we will start to see less coal being used soon when the plants get retired. So that striking that balance is very crucial for us. But yeah, we still need to develop, but it cannot be at the expense of the environment.
Yeah, of course, because at the end of the day, it will affect the resources that we would have in order to maintain a better environment in terms of, for the country itself.
Yeah.
So you hope to make future environmental impact assessment or EIA research more transparent. Is it possible to provide additional information on the EIA studies and where and why should the EIA be made available to the public as well? Yeah,
previously, the EIA has always been available on the website, the DOE website. So there were complaints about accessing it recently. I mean, this was probably sometime last year. So I'm getting a full brief on it. But I think there are a few key changes that I think we need to make, because the EIA comes from a legislation that goes way back quite some time ago, in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. So the context of it was very different. The expectations of the public was very different. It was probably good for its time. But now we are in 2022. We are in the world of ESG, or in the world of net zero. And I think that the EIA must be brought to 2022 or 2023. Sorry. So I think that is very crucial. And one of the most important portions of it is that it has to be as much of information as possible must be shared with the public. And I think in that sense, then you can build the confidence, because sometimes, when people complain, when people make allegations, it may not be true. But if it's fully transparent, then it's easy to build the confidence that we can say that that accusation is wrong or it's not based on facts.
Absolutely. The social media does play a massive role when it comes to conversations about the environment, even in terms of resources, climate change, everything of the sort. Sometimes we hear things that might be a bit of an iffy side if we're not really sure where it's coming from. So this transparency would definitely be helpful for us as the public to understand a lot more of what needs to be done, especially from whether it's from our side or whether it's from the ministry side. Okay, we'll be taking a short break for now. I am speaking to Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. We're talking about towards sustainable future. And remember, you can find us at TRAXXfm Official Facebook Live right now. Don't go anywhere.
Experience the excitement right here on TRAXXfm.
Listening to opinions from experts regarding issues relating to Malaysians and the citizens of the world when we go face to face with our guest. Every Thursday at 11:15 a.m. Only on TRAXXfm.
She said every time I close my eyes I feel like I could disappear.
Experience the excitement. Right here. Right here on TRAXXfm.
This is Trax Momentum with me, Diyana. It is still face-to-face, and I am still speaking to Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi, Nik Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. And we are talking about Towards Sustainable Future. So far, the conversation has been quite interesting, finding out more what the Ministry's plan is for the near future, and of course, certain transparency when it comes to the environmental impact assessment research for us listeners, in fact, for the public, for that matter, to find out more information about what is out there for us to know in terms of the ministry's efforts as well as other parties that are involved. Now, thank you once again, YB, for joining me again today. So will the Official Secrets Act and Freedom of Information raise any issues when it comes to handling environmental and climate change related issues?
Yes, I think, again, that's another legislation that we have to look into. I think because if you look at the OSA, the presumption is that all government information is secret unless declared otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it has a historical element to it, whether it's the colonial era or the Cold War era during the Darurat, the Malaysian emergency. But I think, we're living in the 21st century. And I think the way we look at things should be different. Obviously, there are certain government information that should remain secret because some defense or strategic things. But it should be the other way around, right? So that's the principle. But obviously, that will take a long time for us, I think, to work on that. But I think we will look at my ministry on how we can, within our ambit of responsibility, what we can do to make the environmental information more easily to be easily obtained by the public in general. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something we will work on, because I think that will help people to hold us to account. And one of the things that I did was, on the first day of Parliament for the new government, I wrote to the Speaker, Datuk Johari Abdul, to say that my ministry is proposing an environment and climate change parliamentary select committee, which will be bipartisan. There'll be opposition, there'll be government, to monitor my ministry. Because I think it's important that all MPs have a stake and they can hold me to account. So that for me, it's about me doing my job better.
Yeah, it's that sense of accountability that a lot of people usually want to sort of get and feel from any ministry, for that matter. I suppose in terms of the government's commitment to acting more swiftly and actively towards a sustainable future, it is demonstrated by the formation of a ministry specifically tasked with addressing climate change. What do you think about that?
Yes, as I said, I think the merger of the two ministries is very crucial, because this ministry, if you look at history, at one time it was one ministry, that it was taken out and then merged again. Something was taken out, a small part of it, and so on and so forth. Until now it's remerged. And it's almost complete. And I think there was an article by one of my predecessors, YB Yobiyin, who at that time was Mestek, but she did not have water or natural resources. So she said that this is the best form of an environmental ministry that you can get. So I think that's good. And I think that shows the commitment from the Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, and the government in order to address the pertinent issue of climate change.
It will be very fascinating to see how this all pans out, especially because you are including, it is quite inclusive in that sense, because the common goal is towards sustainable future at the end of the day. Now, where do you wish to take the Environment and Climate Change Ministry as a result of the ministry streamlining?
Well, one of the things is, one of the main plans that we are working on, it's something that has been there even before me, i.e. the climate change bill. But for us, it's about expediting the bill, because again, this is one of the bills or legislation that will ensure that a lot of our environmental legislation that we have will be up to date with the issue of climate change. So I think that is one of the main priorities that we have. And then there's the issue of energy. So now that it's under one ministry, so we are not, if there's just an energy ministry, they may look at it purely from an energy perspective. But now it's linked because the energy sector is among the biggest emitters in the economy. So, but we have to talk about the energy transition to go towards greener energy and towards net zero. But at the same time, we want to do it in a way that is as inclusive as possible for the B40 and even for the M40. So I think that is one of the most important things. Similarly to water, our water sector, we are among the highest users of water in the region. We use a lot of water. There's also a lot of wastage, water that does not make it to the bill or to the accounts, right? So people steal water or there's leakages in the pipes, and that's some states as high as 60%.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of wastage. Water is a very crucial resource. Future wars might be fought over water. So we need to look into that as well, because that's under my ministry. And how can we make it sustainable? We have states where they are flooding, but at the same time the water supply is, it's not proper. It's in a bad state.
Yeah,
right?
It's not clean water.
It's not clean water. So I think those are things that we really have to work on, and it's a lot of work.
Do take note if you are tuning in right now. I am speaking to Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, talking about, the resources, the current resources that we have. We mustn't take it for granted. We must be aware of what these resources are and how it can be helpful for us in the future, or what could potentially happen if we actually took it for granted. But anyways, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Remember to stay in touch with us at TRAXXfm Official on Facebook. We are live right now, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly.
Experience the excitement right here on TRAXXfm.
Listening to opinions from experts regarding issues relating to Malaysians and the citizens of the world when we go face to face with our guests every Thursday at 11:15 a.m. only on TRAXXfm.
Experience the excitement right here on TRAXXfm.
Welcome back to Tracks Momentum. This is Diyana. On Face to Face right now, I'm speaking to Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. We have been talking so much about what the ministry's plans are when it comes to wanting to make a change, the unity government, and how the roles that are being played at this point of time, and also transparency from the ministry's part or even the government's part for us, the public, to know more information. Now, once again, welcome back, Yang Berhormat. Thank you so much for joining me today. So continuing on with the conversation, even though with all the plans, whether it has like the best laid plans, everything is structured, and enforcement and implementation at the end of the day are very, very important factors. How do you envision enforcing or monitoring environmental protection laws?
The most important thing is to have a change of mindset. It's not... what do you call that? It's not just a normal routine thing that what we are doing. And if you realize that this ministry, this portfolio is something very existential, it's about, whether we have a planet to live in over the next few decades, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if we change that mindset, and then I think we can see a different approach to things. To be honest, I think there's a lot of good work that has been done, but we can do better, and I think the public expects better. Again, the younger generation, I think they expect better because it's about them. So I think that's one of the most important things. But then there are other issues as well. We also have to think creatively. I think enforcement, manpower has always been an issue. But there has been a scheme a few years ago that was launched where, rangers were hired to monitor the forest. They are veterans, military veterans, because, there's an issue of military veterans retiring at 40 without a sustainable job after that. And why can't we hire them? They know how to go in the jungle, they know how to use weapons and whatnot, and to protect our wildlife and whatnot. So I think that's the approach that we have. We have to be creative, but ultimately we have to know and realize that this is something that is really about really, really big existential life and death stuff.
Yes, I suppose let's begin to think that we are no longer we are not invincible. Yeah. We are not immortals. While even though one would say, life is short, I will go at the time that I will go. You don't want to go when the planet is also going at the end of the day. So it is heavy conversation, existential crisis life, in terms of thought. But it is important for us to, really, really learn to discuss this amongst ourselves as well as our family and friends. Now, YB, you've mentioned that a business as usual approach will no longer be sufficient. Careful planning and consideration will be required to accurately map out national responsibilities to battle climate change and its damaging effects. A Parliamentary Select Committee on the Environment and Climate Change was suggested by the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change to the Dewan Rakyat Speaker on December 19th, like what you had mentioned. This is to help the government develop clear policies and identify mitigation strategies in relation to climate change. Now, how will we handle environmental and climate change issues effectively? And more importantly, what a lot of people would want to know is how soon will we actually be able to see results?
Yeah, I see 5 key principles when we talk about the NRECC's work, right? My ministry. First is that our legislative agenda, and the main one that is coming up is the Climate Change Act. And secondly is that reform impetus must continue. We must realize that we can do more. We need to change more things in order to protect the planet. And third, now that the whole world is moving towards ESG objectives, net zero objectives, so I think the international cooperation element is very, very crucial. And fourthly is that we have to be as inclusive as possible. It cannot be in the Putrajaya bubble. It cannot be in the KL bubble. We need to bring all these things that we want to do, from Perlis to Sabah, from people in the smallest kampongs to the biggest towns to understand what we want to do. And finally, leadership is key. So people in the ministry, not just me, but the civil servants, the entire ministry, they must understand that this is something that we need to push in order that we can really drive change on the ground. But it's not something that is going to be simple. This is a work that may take generations, right? And it cannot, having a climate change act is not a magic bullet. It's just part of the picture. So what we must do also, we must think, work and plan in terms of decades rather than years. Not just in terms of, it's the next election. And what can we do just so that we can win the next election? It has to go much, much beyond that. And that's why, for example, I'm involving the opposition through a Parliamentary Select Committee, hopefully. And but there are short-term things that we can achieve, medium-term and long-term, but it has to be a very holistic approach.
Of course. And in fact, what matters is we have to start yesterday. And the thing is, I did mention, I would like to ask this question to you, YB, because you have mentioned that while it's meant to be an inclusive thing, I suppose the approach would sound as if it would mostly come from the ministries or the side or the government side to educate. However, there are a lot of Malaysians who are well aware and very knowledgeable in perhaps changing certain things in terms of the environment, perhaps supporting the movement of improving the environment as well as climate change. What are some of the things that the Malaysians can do to help assist the ministry?
Yeah, laws can only do so much. The government can only do so much, right? So it has to be really being brought down to the ground, to every individual. And I think, habits, if we can change our habits. Obviously, there are nudges that the government did. For example, the 30 cent or 20 cent for the plastic bag. I remember when it was introduced 2008 or 2009 in Selangor, people say, people won't change and all that. But that was a nudge, but eventually people change. And I mean, I still have my forgetful moments. You go out to buy stuff and you didn't bring a bag. But generally, people have started to change because of that. But there are other things that people can do, right? I mean, let's talk about energy. The easiest thing that we can do is simply, it's a thing that our parents probably taught us, our grandparents taught us, is just switch off the light or fan or aircon where you're not using it, right? It's something that's very small, but it can be very meaningful. And now, again, there are nudges to help that with the smart meter, with the app that the TNB is providing, for example. You can monitor your energy usage more effectively. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do that again, the government doesn't have to do much, right? Just maybe nudges here and there, but which I believe it will have a big impact in terms of protecting the planet.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that. I suppose a lot of things, when people say, what change is it actually going to make at the end of the day, it's probably potentially due to the fact that some people might not actually see how it affects them personally. Yeah. So I suppose if you can consider, how would it be like for your, how would it affect yourself as a person, perhaps even your loved ones, your close family members and whatnot, your friends, then that way you will be able to know that there is a sense of urgency towards this. Now, unfortunately, we are close to running out of time. I do have a couple of questions, really, really quick one. At this point of time, YB, how well prepared are we as a nation to handle emergencies brought on by climate change? I think this is important for us to know, as well as to prepare for and respond to floods.
I think if you look at what, not just under my ministry, but the various agencies and other ministries that are involved, for example, in the Batang Kali tragedy, we see that, in terms of the response and all that, I think our team is very capable. And they work really hard. We saw what happened to some of the rescuers, even the dogs and whatnot. But we also have to look at things at the long-term planning and prevention. Again, we can't just blame the past. As I said, a lot of the weather patterns, for example, today, we did not predict it happening 5-10 years ago because of global warming, for example, because of climate change. So I think how well prepared are we? I think that's why we really have to catch up with the times. A lot of, I think, monitoring, prevention, I think a lot of that has to go in. We know that, there was that huge proposal for flood prevention, but, it is going to take years again. So, there was a lot of hoo-ha over when the PM announced that he wanted to ensure that the tenders and whatnot were done properly. But because it's not about this year's flooding, it's going to take years to solve it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, but we will do it properly, because I think we cannot use this excuse to create other problems. Yeah,
transparency is quite key at this point of time. There is so much that needs to be done on the government's part, whether it is this ministry or others as well. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time with you, Yang Muhammad. But is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Well, no, I just hope that, we all can play our part. I will work very hard, I can assure you that, to deliver on my portfolio. But I also hope, as we discussed just now, that everyone can also play their role, so that not just our country, but the planet can have a better future.
Thank you very much, Yang Muhammad, for joining me. I was speaking to Yang Muhammad Nik Nazmi, Nik Ahmad, the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, towards sustainable future. In fact, if you want to rewatch this interview, you can head to Facebook. We're on TRAXXfm Official Live. And remember, you need to play your part as well. And we hope all the best for the ministry in achieving their goals in the near future. And in fact, for all of us listeners at TRAXXfm, we hope to take care of our planet. That's the most important thing at this point of time. Anyways, I'll be back shortly to wrap things up before the news at 12 o'clock. Stick around. This is TRAXXfm.
Experience the excitement right here on TRAXXfm.
Listen in to opinions from experts regarding issues relating to Malaysians and the citizens of the world when we go face-to-face with our guest. Every Thursday at 11:15 a.m. Only on TRAXXfm.